Can I firstly acknowledge Barry McGowan and the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, their elders past and present, and can I thank Paula, CEDA, all the sponsors for allowing me to come along here today for this event. It's also terrific to be here today with two very talented and capable members of my cabinet. Our Treasurer, Ben Wyatt, and Simone McGurk, the Minister for Communities, both of whom will be joining me on the stage later on. And it's also great to be back here at CEDA for a major address to you all. I was here last year to speak about our first year in office. And 2 years ago, CEDA kindly had me here as opposition leader when I outlined a vision that we had for Western Australia. And that is for a Western Australia that's fair, prosperous and brimming with opportunity. And also what a Labor government would deliver in the public sector. In that speech, I outlined that we would drive a change in the culture of government by encouraging greater collaboration and reduce the number of government departments by 20%. Just as a quick update for those of you who were at that speech, we ended up reducing the number of government departments by 40%, not 20%. From 41 government departments down to 25. It's hard to believe it's been 2 years since that speech and that we've now been in office for 20 months. We've done so much, it's hard to keep a track sometimes. Just the other day, I was speaking at the Electrical Trades Union conference. A little bit of a different crowd to the one here today. I was running through a list of some of the things we'd done as a government. Passing the WA Jobs Act, which means local businesses benefit more from government procurement, freezing TAFE fees for 4 years, the container deposit scheme, joining the federal NDIS, voluntary assisted dying legislation, getting the Children's Hospital open, deregulating taxis, strata reform, liquor reform, the list goes on, getting Metronet underway, overwhelmingly funded with billions of dollars we have secured from the federal government. As an aside, I do love federal funding. If I'm ever feeling down, I think of that federal money paying for our projects, and it really lifts my spirits. And after I finished talking about all those things at that event, I was bailed up by two electricians. They told me that was all great stuff, but why hadn't they heard of any of it before? Now, I know that this audience here is very engaged, and I'm sure you could all list off those achievements yourselves. But in any event, we've given this brochure here for you to take home so that you can have a look at those achievements. So today, what I want to do is tell you why we do what we do, give you a bit of an insight into our heads, show you what this government is all about and what this means for our great state, Western Australia. I've always been a very keen student of government, politics and history. Ever since high school and through my time in the Navy and eventually as a Member of Parliament, I learned from leaders like Jeff Gallop, Alan Carpenter, Kim Beazley, Richard Court and Colin Barnett. I've observed governments of all stripes, whether federal, state or international. And it's lessons from those governments that weigh heavily on my mind as a relatively new Premier of Western Australia. There's a lot of dissatisfaction and cynicism with government in Australia today, especially with the continued removal of Prime Ministers. In light of this, I think it imperative to deliver good, stable government. It's a political advantage to not be engaging in personality conflicts, the rolling of leaders, ideological obsessions and self-indulgence. It's the right thing to do. People want stable, responsible, reliable and competent government. So the problem that confronts me every day is this. The people of Western Australia put a record-breaking amount of faith in my team and I. How do we not let them down? Or alternatively, how do we run a good government in 2018 and in the years ahead? Ideology is not the answer, and I'm not an ideologue by any means. While you need to stand for something and fight for something, I've found that ideology rarely holds up to the realities of government and will leave you either uncaring in the face of human plight or charged with hypocrisy if and when you need to drop it as the situation demands. Always chasing public opinion doesn't work either, whether it's been led by focus groups or seeking approval from a vocal section of society or the media. The public can sense when you don't believe what you're saying. That's one reason that Malcolm Turnbull never had sustained success as Prime Minister. What works better to guide a government is values. You don't drop your values when things get tough. They are ingrained in you from day one, by your parents, by your community, by the world you see each and every day. They shape your priorities. They shape your decisions. When I was growing up, I remember my parents working hard to provide for us. My dad was a wool classer, my mother a primary school teacher, before they bought a small business in northern regional New South Wales. And despite tough times and poring over the books each night, they made it work. But I remember them telling my brother and I that not everyone was as fortunate as us. Not everyone got a fair go in life, but that everybody should. That our leaders have a responsibility to make our country a better, fairer place for everybody, no matter where they start in life or what life throws at them. My dad taught me that the Australian way is to take everyone with you on the journey. Otherwise, the nation is diminished. This is why, when given the responsibility of government, when we have to make the hard calls, we will always consider what is the fair and compassionate decision. What will make our state stronger? What will provide new opportunities to West Australians, no matter where they started in life? I think you would agree we've had no shortage of hard calls to make or problems to tackle. We inherited a shocking set of finances, a domestic economy that had been shrinking each and every year since 2013. So the challenge for us is this: how do you run a good, progressive government when you have no money and the voters will be waiting for you with cricket bats if you make a mess of it? For the last 20 months, we've met that challenge by working methodically through each problem, through the prism of our values and the policy agenda upon which we were elected. And you can see it time and time again. It's been a remarkably stable and responsible approach. It shows that fairness and compassion and strong economic and financial management can go together. When we looked to budget repair in each of our last two budgets, we made sure the burden was shared across the community. Everyone had to contribute, whether households, the public sector or the private sector. We froze the salaries of all politicians, judges and the highest paid public servants for 4 years to show that those at the top were willing to set an example. For the rest of the public sector, we set a tough new wages policy to get the finances under control, with a flat $1,000 increase, no matter the level of the employee, meaning those who earn the least received an above-inflation pay rise while saving the taxpayers $500 million. Our plan for jobs was designed to be an affordable way to diversify the state's economy and create new jobs for West Australians by leveraging what we do in government, from changing laws and regulations to how we use government land, to changing the way government procures from the private sector. Metronet was designed not just for the economic stimulus and productivity improvements that come from urban rail, but because of the quality of life improvements that come from delivering good public transport to the outer suburbs for the working men and women and their families who live there. When it came time for Western Australia to do the morally right thing and join the National Redress Scheme and remove the statute of limitations for the victims of child sexual abuse, we did the financially responsible thing by having a plan to pay for it by commercialising a part of Landgate. Our decision to draft government legislation for voluntary assisted dying in Western Australia was driven by deep compassion for the terminally ill, experiencing grievous and shocking suffering, and the conviction that politicians cannot shy away from our duties as legislators. Prioritising the repair and opening of the Children's Hospital was about making sure our children had the quality health care they deserved, making sure the long-suffering staff of Princess Margaret Hospital could finally get into their new workplace, and ending the waste of taxpayers' money on a hospital without patients and a car park without cars. Not to mention giving the people of Western Australia a little bit of faith the government was capable of solving complex problems. You might have noticed we have a strong focus on financial responsibility. We made a commitment to get the finances under control, which is something we intend to deliver. We have a responsibility to deliver it for future generations and set the standard that any future West Australian government must adhere to. This, of course, gives us a problem. In an economy where you want to stimulate employment and activity, how do you do that when you don't have cash to spend? One thing we can do is take a look at ourselves and see what unnecessary or overly burdensome processes or duplication is getting in the way of economic activity, which is why this morning I announced Streamline WA, a new initiative to coordinate efforts at red tape reduction at the highest levels of government, together with industry and not-for-profits. Now, I'm not the first Premier, nor will I be the last, to promise red tape reduction. But government is often blind to the inefficiencies and duplication it presides over. We're not looking to remove the protections that are in the public interest or benefit the community. This is about improving the way government, business and the community interact with each other by bringing business and NGOs into the tent. So Western Australia benefits. But there's other things that this government can do as well, without weakening our financial position. A lot of the economic discussion in Western Australia at the moment has to do with house prices. At the moment, prices all around the nation are in decline. While all states have their own factors, it's evident that APRA's credit control measures over the last few years and the further tightening from the Banking Royal Commission has dampened activity across the nation. To respond to this situation, I'm announcing that Western Australia will be expanding the size of the Key Start loan book by over $420 million to allow more first home buyers to enter the market. This is the most financially responsible mechanism the state government has at its disposal to assist the housing market and support the residential construction industry. It has no impact on net debt. I repeat, it has no impact on net debt. Last year, 77% of Key Start loans were used for construction of homes, a clear benefit for our construction and building industry. In 2017-18, Key Start loans supported an estimated 1,700 jobs, and generated up to $670 million in economic activity. Key Start is one of the main reasons why Western Australia has the highest percentage of first home buyers in the nation. This is exactly the sort of policy my government is keen to pursue, one that provides more opportunities for West Australians to own a home and encourages new jobs in construction, financially responsible with no net debt impact, and economically productive. It's fair for everyone to ask, however, what is our financial restraint delivered for Western Australia? After all, haven't we finally secured the historic GST deal that Western Australia has sought for a decade? You would have seen the other week that the additional GST revenue, estimated to be $1.7 billion across the next 3 years, will be directed to the debt reduction account, saving at least $200 million in interest payments alone. This decision is a line in the sand for Western Australia. We don't want to repeat the mistakes of the past and blow revenue windfalls. We should not forget that the last government left a $2.4 billion deficit in their final year. In opposition, the Treasurer and myself made the commitment to get the books back in the black. There is no other option for a serious government. And by showing restraint with spending, we are making a difference. Thanks to the hard, difficult work of the Treasurer and all my Cabinet colleagues, we have gotten spending under control. I have the most disciplined and financially responsible Cabinet in the nation. Spending growth is now at historic lows. That restraint pays dividends. To use next financial year, 2019-20, as an example, in our first budget, we were projecting a $1.1 billion deficit for that year. By the mid-year review, we got it down to just under $700 million. In this year's budget, back in May, we slashed it to just $160 million. That's nearly a $1 billion turnaround in the projection. But it gets better. Thanks to the great financial management of the Treasurer Ben Wyatt, I might also add supported well by the WA Treasury. I'm very happy to announce to you all today, Western Australia will once again be in surplus in 2019-20, 1 year ahead of schedule. This will be the first time Western Australia will be in surplus in 6 years. And we will not just be squeaking over the line either. This will be a substantial surplus in the hundreds of millions of dollars. But this much is clear. The sooner we're in surplus, the sooner debt is reduced, the lower our interest payments. While the GST fix helps, we would not be in this position, nor would we ever have secured the deal if we hadn't shown financial restraint and responsibility ourselves. For the first time in many years, Western Australia has a government that is fiscally responsible again. In December 2018, this is the state of the state under the McGowan Labor government. After 2 budgets and 20 months of government, the economy is showing the first year of growth in half a decade. 48,000 jobs have been created. Spending is under control and we will be in surplus sooner than expected, and our credit ratings are being upgraded. Crime is on the decrease. Billions in new road and rail funding has been secured from the federal government. Given the parlous condition the state was in last year, it's not too bad a start. But it will be important to hold the course. It's important for 2 reasons. Firstly, we need to hold the course because of the scale of the task. In just 20 months, you cannot pay off eye-watering record debt or solve every problem. It's a task that will fall to governments in Western Australia for decades to come. Secondly, it's important to hold the course because these things never go in a straight line. We could wake up tomorrow to a particularly shocking piece of economic data, or a particularly shocking tweet from Donald Trump. But no matter the shocks, one thing everyone in the audience and everyone around the state can take confidence in is that my government will face the problems that confront the state with fairness and compassion, with a focus on the finances and the economy, and will keep us on the path to a vision that we have for Western Australia of a state that is fair, prosperous and brimming with opportunity. Thanks very much.